Alright, so this is my 00 vintage deck. It is based off of the vintage format. So I don't have my usual 4 copies of Black Lotus and any of the boxes that I normally would play 4 of. I'm actually following, for this profile anyway, the list. So this is what the deck would look like if I was playing vintage format, following the vintage restricted list. For Valdekin Archmage, he's the main engine of the deck because you summon him whenever you play an artifact spell, and pretty much everything in here is an artifact spell. All the creatures, all the artifacts, all the moxes, you know, obviously they're all artifacts. So when you cast them, they'll be artifact spells. You draw a card. If you have more than one Valdekin Archmage on the field, the effect stacks. So if I have 2 on the field and I cast an artifact spell, I draw 2 cards. And so obviously that's awesome. And this is to help me literally draw into my entire deck and put my entire deck onto the field in a single turn or in a couple turns, you know what I mean? The sooner I get this out on the field, the better. Especially if I could get this out first turn, drop half my deck onto the field, and my turn, my opponent does some stuff, then it's my turn, then I can attack him with everything I got. Especially if I combo it with save for the moment, so that way my opponent doesn't have a turn. I'll take an extra turn, and now all my big monsters like my Mirror Enforcers, you know, my Frog Mites, my Magnum Knights, along with a Cradio Plating, can, you know, OTK my opponent before he gets a chance to even mount an offensive or defense. So we got Maggots of the Future. This is just like the Enchantment Future site. I play with the top card of my library revealed. I can play the top card of my library. So I'm able to cast stuff from the top of my library, which is amazing. Especially, as you can see, 0, 0, 0, 0, you know, 0, 0. Affinity for artifacts, so it could become 0. Affinity for artifacts, so it could become 0. You get the idea. A lot of cheap stuff, a lot of stuff that comes off for free. So I can essentially play my entire library onto the field just using him. So then we got Ornithopter. It's a 0/2 flyer artifact creature. Costs 0 to cast. Memnite. It's an artifact creature. 1/1, 0 to cast. Phyrexian Walker. 0/3 artifact creature. 0 to cast. Frogmite. Costs 4, but it has Affinity for artifact. It costs 1 less for every artifact I can control. It's a 2/2. So if I have 4 artifacts, it costs 0. Mirror Enforcer. It costs 7. It's a artifact creature. It's a 4/4. It has Affinity for artifacts. It costs 1 less for each artifact I control. If I have 7 artifacts, it costs 0 to cast. Rite of Replication. Blue sorcery. 2 colors, 2 blue. It has a kicker. I can pay 5 extra, so it'd be a total casting of 9 mana. To cast it, to give it its kick ability, which will give it the ability to put 5 tokens on the battlefield instead of just 1. That's a copy of a target creature on the field. So if I don't kick it, I only pay 2 colors, 2 blue, I could put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature. I could target my own creatures like Valdekin Archmage, so that way I can have 2 mages on the field. So when I play an artifact spell, I draw 2 cards instead of 1. I can copy my Mirror Enforcer, so I have more 4/4 creatures on the field that I can attack with, and having 5 4/4s, that's 20 damage right there off of one card. Of course, I could copy my opponent's monsters. I could target maybe a monster he has that has double strike, for example, so that way I can deal a lot of damage, especially a monster that not only has like really high attack but also has haste. Would definitely be awesome, because then you just copy it, make 5 copies of that creature with haste, and then be able to attack in the same turn. Savor the moments. It's a slightly more expensive time walk. I didn't want to play just 1 copy of time walk and then 3 savor the moments, so I just put 3 savor the moments, because it's that extra cost is not too big of a deal, because it's worth it for the extra turn, so I can OTK my opponent. Cranial plating, of course, costs 2. It's an artifact equip. When you pay 1 to equip it to a creature, the creature gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. You can pay 2 black mana to attach cranial plating to target creature you control. So you'll be able to switch this from one creature to another creature during battle. So gotta love that. Welding Jar costs 0 to cast. It's an artifact. Sacrifice Welding Jar, regenerate target artifact. And my monsters are artifacts, so you'll be able to regenerate them. Cranial plating is an artifact. You'll be able to regenerate that, so that way it's not destroyed. Mox Opal, one of your mana producing artifacts, you could protect it. Any of your Moxes you could protect. Your Mana Vault, whatever you have that you want to protect, you can protect it. And this can regenerate target artifact. That means even one of your own opponent's artifacts. Let's say he has an artifact that has an effect that says destroy that artifact and every other card on the field, hypothetically. Then by regenerating it, it'll prevent it from being destroyed. So that way, every card doesn't get destroyed or some shit like that, right? Mox Opal, legendary artifact, costs 0 to cast. It has Metalcraft. Tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts. And all of those cards I just mentioned, those are the 4 ofs. And now we're going to the 1 ofs. 1 Mox Sapphire, 0 to cast artifact. Tap, create 1 blue mana. Mox Jet, artifact, costs 0 to cast. Tap, create black mana. Those are the 2 main colors you'll be using in the deck, blue and black obviously. And Mox Ruby, just because it's a 0 casting artifact, you tap, create red mana. You use this to pay for colors. Mox Emerald, 0 to cast artifact, tap, create green, same thing. But what's also useful about this is that if you use Writer Replication to copy something like an elf or anything, you copy any creature that your opponent controls. If the creature is red, now you have a way of, you have red mana to cast, to use its activated abilities. If your opponent has a creature that was green with an mana activated ability, you can afford the green. So these are not exactly useless. They have use if you combine it with Writer Replication, copy one of your opponent's creatures, and then you do have the colors necessary to activate the creature's mana cost activated abilities. Continuing on with Mox Pearl, 0 to cast artifact, tap, create 1 white mana. Black Lotus. 0 to cast artifact. Tap, sacrifice Black Lotus, add 3 colors, add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. So if you choose blue, you create 3 blue. You choose black, 3 black. You choose white, 3 white. You get the idea. Typically you'll create blue. That's what I normally do. But sometimes you might want to create black. But typically it will be blue. Lotus Petal. Artifact, cost 0 to cast. Tap, sacrifice Lotus Petal, add 1 color, 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Typically blue or black. Mana Crypt is an artifact, costs 0 to cast. At the beginning of your upkeep, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, Mana Crypt deals 3 damage to you. Tap, add 2 to your mana pool. It's kind of like Soul Ring, but with a, little drawback, as it were. But it's worth it. Cost it. You could cast it for 0, tap for 2, and be able to play Cranial Plating on the same turn. So can't argue with that. The losing 3 is acceptable when you're obviously able to take an extra turn and beat your opponent before that taking 3 damage even becomes an issue. Tolarian Academy, one of my favorite lands in the game, and is definitely awesome in this deck. Tolarian Academy, legendary land. Tap, add 1 blue mana to your mana pool for each artifact you control. So if you have 10 artifacts, 10 blue mana, so you can obviously cast a lot, especially if you use Tolarian Academy to produce a lot of mana with Magus of the Future, and you can start casting a whole bunch of stuff from the top of your deck that might cost stuff like Rites of Replication, because typically you use Tolarian to create the 9 blue mana necessary to cast Rites of Replication, so that's what I tend to do a lot, of course. But you can use the mana to cast multiple copies of Savor the Moments, multiple copies of Cranial Planes, and being able to afford to equip them. Of course, being able to cast Magus, the Future, and Valdeccan Archmage. Your main engine to get this deck up and running at full power. Academy Ruins, legendary land. Tap, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. Typically you won't use that often. What you're going to use the most, of course, is the secondary effect, which is 1 colorless, 1 blue. Tap, put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. So this is really good because pretty much everything in here is an artifact. So you'll be able to get back your Black Lotuses after you tap and sacrificed it. You'll be able to get back your, where is it? So one of, right next to it, your Lotus Petal, your Welding Jars, just any of your creatures, your Mirror Enforcers, any of them that might have died because you used them to block. You'll be able to recover them using Academy Ruins. And if you use Academy Ruins, right, in combination with Magus of the Future, you don't have to wait a turn to use it. You use Academy Ruins to put the artifact on top of your deck. Like, let's say it's an Ornithopter. You put Ornithopter on top of your deck, and since it costs 0 to cast, you can cast on top of your deck. You just cast it for free. Glimmer Void, at the beginning of the end step, if you control no artifacts, sacrifice Glimmer Void. That's going to be kind of hard not to have artifacts, since you're going to summon a whole bunch of artifacts for free. Tap, add 1 color of any color to your mana pool. Typically blue or black is what you'll create with this. Nykthos, Shrine of Nyx, legendary land. Tap, add 1 color to your mana pool, or pay 2. Tap, choose a color, add to your mana pool an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. The only permanents in this deck that have color is Valdeccan Archmage and Magus of the Future. So if you have 1 Archmage and 1 Magus on the field, your devotion obviously will be 5. So you'll pay 2 to create 5. So yeah, I love that. And of course, if you have multiple copies of Magus and Valdekin on the field, the mana increases. So this acts as your pseudo Tolarian Academy. So that's why it's in there for that. And that's the end of the deck profile.